Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the HBI 2021 Nordic panel. The Nordics is a fascinating and unique area when it comes to healthcare and care. There are opportunities, but they often come with major political and regulatory risks. Norway effectively terminated the outsourcing of elderly nursing homes to the private sector, and many sectors have been heavily consolidated by a few big players. And of course, COVID-19 has generally had a dramatic impact across the region. Going forward, we are seeing good recovery from COVID in most Nordic countries, but what are the real political risks? How do operators grow in heavily consolidated markets? And what are the growth sectors? Today we have an expert panel with decades of experience in this sector to discuss these fascinating topics. Benno Eliasson is the CFO of Ambea, one of the top 2 elder care operators across Sweden, Norway and Denmark, which operates in care homes, disability care and home care. He has held leading roles in finance, including CFO at HL Display, Randstad Nordic and Profis, and before that roles at ATG, Ikano Bank and the ICA Group. Benno, it's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Vesa Komsa, who is joining us digitally from Finland, is the Executive Vice President at Nordic Healthcare Group and leads NHG's advisory services with a focus on value-based healthcare. Before joining Nordic Healthcare Group, he worked within healthcare field at Boston Consulting Group in Sweden. He has 16 years experience from various engagements with pharma, medtech, secondary care, primary care, and elderly care. Vesa, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Great. Ville Iho, which I hope I'm pronouncing correctly.
Perfect.
Is the president and CEO of Terveystalo, the largest for-profit healthcare group in Finland by revenue, which recently expanded into Sweden. He has held multiple CXO-level positions, including the CAO of Nermanen Logistics PLC, and was a high flyer with Finnair PLC for 18... Do you see what I did there? It was very funny. With Finnair PLC for 18 years in various senior roles, including COO and acting CEO. So, Benno, I'll come to you first. The Nordics are quite famous for some of its governments being politically hostile to for-profit operators, such as the restriction on outsourcing of elder care in Norway that we mentioned. Do you think that's a fair statement across all the markets you operate in? And what are the real political risks you see in the future?
Yeah, I could say that there is, of course, political challenges in the different countries, but they're a little bit different in the different countries and then different in the sub-segments. We see, as you just said, that the Norwegian market is a little bit more political right now. It used to be Sweden a couple of years ago, or Denmark 1 year ago. So it's a little bit ups and downs over the year. We have learned through many years to deal with political changes. We have worked with Social Democrats government. We have worked with more right, liberal type of governments as well. So I think we have learned how to deal with it. But of course, there is sometimes a little bit higher risk if you look at from outside. And now a little bit more discussion in Norway when there is a newly election and a Social Democrats government coming in. So of course there is a little bit more discussions around the profits in the welfare sector and like that in Norway right now.
Just on that election, do you think it will change the regulation for the for-profit sector?
I think that there was some changes already that was in the was predicted to happen. You can say that, as you just said, elderly care segment is tough to be as a private operator. We are still there. Many of the other private operators have left the market. So there is a couple of non-profit organizations and mostly municipality-driven. And there was also in the children's care, the government that was before, the blue government, was they tried to change the whole children care segment, and I think that will continue now in the new government. So there was some changes already. Was going to happen that now probably will happen with the new Social Democratic government.
Interesting. Ville, I'll come to you on the first question with a more Finnish perspective, I suppose.
Thank you, James. So first, I think we should look at Finland and Finnish structure because it's totally different. We are talking about Nordics here, but there's Nordics and then there's Finland. And maybe the best illustration of the Nordic healthcare system is by looking to our revenue and revenue split. We are just over 1 billion of revenue annually, and more than 70% of that one is private money, so from corporates and private consumers, and only less than 30% is public money. And hence the political tension, which sort of has any meaningful to do with us is quite limited. But of course in Finland also there's a ongoing back and forth political discussion about different roles. But really the Finnish healthcare system from political point of view is fairly robust due to the sort of interplay between different payer models. And just because now I have the mic, I can basically say anything I like. I just want to comment a couple of things which I have heard during the seminar. I'm fairly fresh for the industry, as you well pointed out, high flyer, as a professional background. Looking at the industry, listening to my esteemed colleagues over two days, there's a lot of discussion around great new things like digital and remote and preventive and AI and whatnot, care continuums, ecosystems, integrated care chains, and that. And if you want to see a lab where this all works already, that's Finland. We have two players in Finland, Terveystalo and then our beloved rival Mehiläinen, who is present here today as well, who are actually delivering on that promise already today, and we can discuss that one later, why that has come to pass. But a lot of that has to do with the structure, the funding model, the structure of the healthcare system. We are not that much smarter than the rest. It's down to the system.
Okay, you've sort of preempted one of my later questions there, but I'll come to you, Vesa, with a perspective on what are the political risks for the future.
Yeah, well, I could just complement what Ville was saying here, that I agree with that it's the political risk in Finland is relatively limited, even though the government is pro-public services, their actual power to enforce that will is rather limited as the decisions are made locally and the sort of reality is what it is, and the private providers are needed there. I could just comment briefly on the Danish system, on the Danish situation, that there we had the discussion about 5 years ago that was stronger against especially the elderly care services. But now the sentiment is still slightly negative, but I wouldn't say hostile, that it's rather that it's the discussion has slowed down and we are seeing mainly neutral discussion. So Danish and Finnish perspective is rather neutral and not so much hostile. And when going forward, it's both in all of the Nordic countries, I would see that the staffing situation and the nurse shortage is a driving force where there is a need for private providers also going forward. And in Finland, as in parallel, there is happening the social healthcare reform that is even enforcing the need for and the possibilities for the private providers to play a larger role in also the public outsourcing market.
Before we go any further, if you have a question, feel free to ask in the app or raise your hand at any point. So you've mentioned there, Vesa, the Finnish social care reform that passed recently. We hear it was a watered down version compared to the original. Do you think it will have a big impact on the market? To you, Vesa.
Yeah, well, basically it's a watered down version of the reform that was presented by the previous government. They presented rather large freedom of choices, and that would have been very beneficial for the private operators. So we don't have that kind of a big boost for the private market, but we wouldn't see it as a negative either. It's rather neutral for the private providers. But it does provide a disruption in the continuity. We have had a similar system for decades, and now there's a huge shift from 300 municipalities to 22 regions, where tens of thousands of employees are changed to new entities. So that will basically, it will provide an opportunity for advanced players like Terveystalo and Mehiläinen to take new types of roles in strategic outsourcing, for example, outsourcing of a full care chains like diabetes patients.
Villa, would you agree with that?
Yeah, very much. The healthcare reform that has been disputed for, I think, a decade, at least in Finland, has now been passed in the parliament, and it's not really a healthcare reform as such. It's a tax reform, and it's a reform on sort of a structural or geographical governance of Finland. And healthcare will come later, and there will be, of course, need to be solutions. Demand for private healthcare will increase, not decrease, going forward. But I agree with Vesa that there's an interesting period ahead of us with a lot of opportunities, but some risks due to the discontinuity of these buyer-provider relationships.
Okay. Benno, I'll come to you on this. So obviously your sector, care, elder care, was one of the most heavily hit by COVID. Has that sort of changed the government's attitude to you in terms of policy, particularly in Sweden where the hit was very severe?
No, I wouldn't say that it would. There is no, you can say, evidence that the private or public-run nursing homes were better off or worse off. There is some statistics saying that the private was a little bit better. So if it would be the other way around, I'm sure there would have been more of a debate around the private contra the public ones. So, of course, when there is this kind of discussions and COVID, and we were not so successful as a country during the COVID, the first wave, there are, of course, some that would argue that this because of the privates are there and like that. But there is no actual evidence that had any negative effect of the COVID situation that we have in Sweden. So over time, I don't think that will change the private contra public-run nursing homes discussion.
Okay. I don't want to labour on COVID because we've discussed it enough for this conference, but how did your businesses recover from COVID? Villa, I'll come to you.
Since summer, of course, it has gone in waves as in any market. But since summer, basically we are with the underlying market excess of COVID-related services, testing and such, we are at a normal level. We are at the 2019 level already. And demand today is not the issue, it's the supply side. Because now we need to build up the supply again. It was down due to the COVID because there was no market for certain services. And now we just need to ramp up the supply of doctors and professionals as fast as we can. So market is there, market is back big time.
Vesa, would you agree with that? Okay.
And well, the impact of COVID on the private providers, I would say that there is a rather large care debt in all of the Nordic countries, which needs to be somehow dismantled. And private providers are, especially when there's at the same time the shortage of staff, it's typically the private providers are one of the sort of solutions to solve that issue. So would see as a positive opportunities for the private providers also from the care debt perspective.
And Benno, what was your view of recovery from COVID in your markets?
I think that we are not really there yet, that the market have come back to the level that was before in nursing homes in Sweden, but we're maybe half the way, and we don't see any long-term changes. The long-term demand is there, and they don't see any big changes in how we can provide our services in nursing homes. So I think that not so big changes as one could think going forward.
Has there been any shift in how you provide home care or other services?
There was a reluctance of moving into nursing homes during the COVID, of course, when there was a lot of infection in the nursing homes. So we have a short-term uptick in the home care segment. That was during the worst period of COVID, we could see that. But I think that it was not a dramatic change over time. I think we are getting back to normal as time goes now, since the vaccination program is more or less fully established in the societies.
Interesting. So the Nordics are... Sorry, were you about to...
While you are pondering about the next question, I could continue on the care debt, which Vesa mentioned. I think it's a big theme in Finnish market. It seems to be a big thing in Swedish market as well when it comes to healthcare. So the queues have been skyrocketing in all of these markets. And as Vesa pointed out, that we have opportunities in dismantling the queues and providing services for public side. But as I said earlier, the supply now is the challenge, not the market.
So do you think that's a real opportunity then, that you can step in and provide more services that the public used to provide?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it plays well now with the introduction of a new healthcare structure, because now this is the sort of perfect momentum in getting into this new relationship with the districts and sort of presenting ourselves as a solution.
Interesting. So a lot of sectors in the Nordics are matured and consolidated by a few big players, including Terveystalo and Ambea. So what are the growth sectors you can expand and grow in the Nordics? Ville, I'll come to you first.
Well, of course, first I should mention the Swedish entry, which we made earlier this summer. So we made the first cross-border acquisition and acquired Feel Good occupational healthcare provider from Sweden. And with that acquisition, we are now the biggest occupational healthcare provider in Europe, which is exciting. But that's, of course, a sort of a initial step for expanding our geographical footprint. That's geographical. But then there are still segments, even though, as I said, we already today we run a vast ecosystem of different services, primary care, secondary care, well-being services, and digital physical vast networks in both. But there are some growing areas still that we can expand at least faster than the core healthcare, like mental health, for example, or well-being related services, more consumer-driven services.
Yeah, I think you mentioned to me in our pre-panel discussion that your fastest growing market was massage services.
Well, looking at the percentages, yes, that is correct. But of course, the underlying starting figure is fairly small. But it goes to show that there's a lot of sort of a demand for well-being related services. If you organize them well, they are good businesses. And with our vast contract key customer base, there's always sort of fast track in deploying new services and presenting them to sort of a already loyal customer base.
So the well-being services tie into your existing occupational healthcare services, sort of extra features?
Yeah. Typically, our system is such that we have the contract key customer base, which is now with Feel Good, it's 1.5 million. And as I said, the fast track in introducing any service is typically through that customer base. But from our customer base, you can typically you use some of the services as occupational healthcare customer when a company is paying for your services. But then you add up with your own money for certain part of the services. So it's sort of a dual customer relationship typically for us.
Okay. First of all, I'll come to you. Would you agree with what Ville said, and what are the other sort of growth sectors looking at maybe Denmark?
Yeah, I can agree with Ville on we've seen the same with the well-being services being one of the growth sectors. I would add there also disabled care and child welfare that has been growing quite nicely in the recent years, and we see that continuing going forward. That's especially in Finland. When it comes to Denmark, home care is still rather fragmented market. So there are consolidation opportunities for larger players. And also it has quite a lot of opportunities for growth. And really the growth driver there is also the staff shortage on the public side, which sort of drives the private demand.
Does that staff shortage not impact private operators in the same way?
Can you say that again?
Does the staff shortage not have the same impact on private operators in terms of limiting the amount of service they can provide?
Well, basically yes, but private providers are typically better in attracting um, the nurses and the physicians when there is a staff shortage. You are able to give more flexible working conditions, better management, other areas of your work that can attract maybe and sometimes even better salary. Basically, being more flexible employer than the public providers.
Yeah, I would actually echo what Vesa was just saying. There's a lot of data on that one. Terveystalo is number one employer from a professional's point of view in Finland. I think the same goes. A good silver medalist, I think, is Mehiläinen. So we are beating public sector as employer for the reasons that Vesa mentioned. We are much more agile, flexible. We are able to provide better working communities, and flexibility of your work is higher, etc., etc. And employer brand is there. So, of course, as I said, as a sort of missed opportunity, you would always, when there's a market as we do have today, you would like to grow faster, but we are better off than the rest of the players.
Ben, I'll come to you. Would you agree with that in your market? So you're better attracting staff?
Yeah, definitely so. Definitely so. I think we have an own education company that we are educating our own staff, but also municipality staff. That we have a very strong employer brand in Sweden, especially, and that of course help us when attracting staff, of course.
I'll come back to the original question. What are the growth sectors you see in sort of the care side of the market?
I think we can grow in both elderly care and disabled care. Elderly care, we have the tailwind from the demographics coming gradually, where we have in all the Scandinavian countries, we have a lot of people born from 1943 to 49, and they are turning 80 and soon, and 85. So in the coming years, we'll see a much larger proportion of people being plus 80 or plus 85, and that will of course help all the players but also of course some challenges for staffing and like that. In the disabled care segment, we are by far number one in Sweden, and we are number one in Norway and Denmark as well, but it's a very fragmented market, so there's still a lot of opportunities there. I think there are like 800 companies or something in that market in Sweden, mostly one site or maybe two sites. There is a lot of add-on opportunities to grow in that market, and in Denmark, Denmark is also a very fragmented market in the disabled care segment. So there is a lot of opportunities for us to grow. Absolutely.
So just on that, you, as you mentioned earlier, obviously they sort of pulled the plug on care homes in Norway for for-profit operators. Is disabled care not a similar sector at similar levels of risk?
No, as I said in the beginning, I think that there is a little bit more focus now on children's care, preschool and other types of children with special needs. There is a little bit more political pressure down there, that there is a political will to increase the number of or the share of non-profit organization. Non-profit organization maybe have 20% of the market or something in Norway, and there is a political will to increase that share, and they say that it shouldn't be on behalf of the municipality driven and that they left for the private. But that is the political will. If that will happen, we don't know. But there is a little bit more pressure on the children's care. Adult care, who is our largest segment in Norway, isn't that political discussions right now that have been in the elderly care and children's care.
Vesa, from sort of your pan-Nordic perspective, would you agree with what Benno said there?
Yeah, well, definitely sounds very similar view that we've had on the Nordic overall market. So nothing to add there.
How consolidated is disabled care? You mentioned 800 small groups. Are they hard to buy? Is it easy to consolidate?
It's very many family-driven small units, and it's in Sweden, many of them started in the 90s or just below, after the millennium, and if they are getting older and the second generation don't want to take over the business, then we are one of the, of course, preferred partners to sell to, and we have a lot of contacts, but it's a matter of timing, and sometimes we have discussions for 5, 6, 7 years with some, and then when the times come, maybe they sell. So we have a lot of these discussions going on all the time.
Okay, interesting. Villa, given that you just bought in Sweden, as you mentioned earlier, how challenging is it to extend your business model between Nordic countries?
Yeah, the business models are totally different, or the structure of healthcare system is totally different in Sweden to Finland. But what we are doing in that exporting our expertise basically is that we believe that in this Finnish very robust, well-funded private sector that we have been mastering for years, we have developed certain capabilities that they are truly scalable across borders. We have scalable capabilities in occupational healthcare, population health management, AI-driven tools that there has been some fuss around in the seminar already. We do have consumer-driven expertise and applications and software that can be scaled across borders. And then, of course, we have scale and we have M&A and integration capability. Sweden is still a fairly fragmented market, and comparing that one to Finland, where basically ourselves and Mehiläinen are masters of the universe, it is a lot more opportunities from a capital allocation point of view.
Interesting. Masters of the universe. Congratulations. So just on that, you're talking about digital models. I think Vesa mentioned to me that Mehiläinen have sold their digital platform abroad outside of the Nordics, and it's fairly rare for Nordic companies to leave the area. What is your view on the sort of future of the digital side of the Nordic market, Vesa?
Yeah, well, COVID basically has driven or boosted the use of digital means. So we see that in pretty much all of the Nordic markets. For example, in Finland, both Terveystalo and Mehiläinen, at least the Mehiläinen statistics were showing about 50% increase in the users of their digital platform. In Denmark, the public sector has turned to use telemedicine pretty extensively, but it's still to be seen that whether the public sector will continue to use the digital means. The private providers then, on the other hand, as Terveystalo and Mehiläinen are leading the way, are seeing the business potential both in improving their own operations, but then as Mehiläinen is already having their own unit selling the digital platform abroad, at least increase probably discussions also elsewhere. There's quite a lot of opportunities there. Like in general, the Europe is lacking the rest of the world, especially US and also some other parts, in the embracing the digital tools and means in healthcare. But the Nordics is really leading the way in taking those digital tools, probably because of rather large private pay sector. And now we are seeing that it's as Terveystalo is expanding to Sweden and starting to use there, but also then the Mehiläinen expanding to outside of Nordics using the same digital means.
Villa seems you're the perfect person to come to after that. What do you think of this digital market, and are you going to follow your fellow masters of the universe into selling it abroad?
As you mentioned, and as Vesa mentioned, we have slightly different strategy when it comes to digital platform. Mehiläinen has the Be Healthy unit, which is selling the sort of white label, off-the-shelf remote tools, which is all good. We have not taken that step yet. We believe in hybrid model and expanding on the digi-physical presence throughout sort of a normal hybrid network. I think both of these strategies can be winning strategies, and we certainly believe in ours. I'm sure Mehiläinen believes in theirs, but I think both of these approaches goes to show what Vesa was just a minute ago saying, that we do have unique capabilities which have been incubated by this special Nordic system or Finnish system, where the private money is leading the investments and development and R&D.
Interesting. Benno, I'll come to you. I know your sector is a bit less digital, but
Yep.
did COVID drive you towards digital solutions?
Yeah, it did. Maybe not the core service, how we deliver the nursing care to the elderly people, but all things all around it, or how we communicate with relatives and with municipalities, how we show our new homes and how we have meetings, of course, and all these kind of things. I think that increased efficiency, and COVID, of course, was a driver of that as well. But the core service to take care of the elderly people in dementia or whatever, that's not so much affected, and that is a little bit trickier to see how we can short term make that more digital, you can say.
Interesting. I think we'll put it open to questions from the floor now, if anyone has a question. Does anyone have a question? I can see we've got one come through on the app, but does anyone in the room have a question?
No.
It's a very interesting panel.
Well, while you are thinking about the questions, maybe it's worth putting some data on the discussion around the digital penetration in Finnish market, at least, just to give some context what we are talking about. When it comes to Terveystalo, we do have almost 2 million digital users since COVID started in our platform, which is out of 5 million population. It's a quite big number. And for example, last year, when it comes to remote and digital appointments, we were at 26% of all of the services given were given remotely, which is again almost 2 million appointments given digitally. And that's of course not all. We do have the back end working as I mentioned already. We have the ERPs, we have the AIs in the working in the background. It's not science fiction for us. It's real life already.
Interesting. Any questions on digital? Yes, we have a man at the front. Not on digital, I assume, but go ahead.
Maybe it's related to digital, but also not in a direct way. Are there any best practices in terms of procurement for you as you become bigger, leveraging scale and some digital channels? There is a lot of discussion about Amazon going into healthcare. So are you seeing something in that direction happening in your region?
Yeah, so very good question. And I think that relates to what type of ecosystem we are building. Is it built around separate modules, which are then integrated, and there's sort of a best of breeds in each and every service? But our model in Finland is fully integrated. So basically, up until now, we have developed our own services, our own software when it comes to remote and digital, just for the fact that there has not been any sort of competitive supplier against our internal R&D. So that has been the model thus far. But of course, there's a lot of investment going on. You mentioned Amazon, and there are a lot more, of course. We will keep our eyes open. Of course, we will always drive for best possible ecosystem for our customers. But up until now, it has been integrated approach and internal development mostly.
Vesa, would you have a view on that?
Yeah, that probably for the time being, the kind of approach that Ville was mentioning is the leading one. But especially when it comes to social care, where you have a lot of different digital devices, where the integration is a bit tricky, and to get the sort of holistic, for example, digital services that support living longer at the home environment. There are quite a lot of opportunities for having a player like Amazon, which integrates everything and makes the sort of holistic service around connecting different devices. So there's probably more opportunities than the healthcare side for this kind of Amazon type of approach, where you would need to somehow integrate with the EMR nevertheless, but in the home care setting, it's probably slightly easier to have a sort of separate ecosystem, which is for the digital means.
Benno, what's your view on digital
Yeah,
Namco?
we have around 350 different municipalities as our customers around the 3 Nordic countries, and of course we have a very different type of documentation system in each, more or less each municipality. So there is a complex environment that we work with. We have, of course, our own system, but we also have to live with a lot of different systems all around the Nordics for documentation and like that. And a little bit tricky sometimes to standardize, because we have to live with what the local municipality have kind of system.
So you don't see that as a major growth sector?
No, I wouldn't say that.
Okay, interesting.
Maybe just to add on what basically Vesa was saying earlier and related to question earlier, one of the newest roadblocks on this integrated approach with different type of ecosystems, different type of data, obviously is GDPR regulations and tightening of those. So even in our own sort of home turf and in our own self, we have of course enough challenges in tackling with the GDPR, with very sensitive data that we are dealing with. So that needs to be kept in mind when thinking about this bright ideas of sort of combining different type of data and providing services on top of that one. So it is a challenge, and it requires special expertise to tackle that challenge.
Does that also sort of undermine internationalization and moving to other markets, the GDPR challenge?
Well, of course, it's a thing that needs to be kept in mind, and it's additional challenge. You need to have a very professional approach to that one, not sort of a cowboy type of just go for it approach.
Any more questions? I can wait. We'll go to the chat. So we've got this question from Julian Turner. Where do you see the next big political risk in the region?
I think we talked about it earlier. I think from the 3 Nordic countries or Scandinavian countries that we are present in, the debate right now is a little bit more intense in Norway. And I see there is a more hostile towards private operators in Norway right now than we see in Sweden and Denmark, for example, where in Sweden we have had a huge debate in the leading government, the Social Democrats right now, regarding schools, private schools that are up. So it's not so much discussion around the nursing homes or disabled care segment as it used to be 4 or 5 years ago, something like that. So I would say, Norway is the where we have the most of these discussions right now.
Vesa, would you agree with that? Biggest political risk?
Probably the largest political risk on the Nordic level is on Norwegian market. In the Finnish market, probably the political risk has a bit materialized when it comes to holistic outsourcing of full healthcare and social care services of specific municipalities. So basically, there's a company called Pihla ja Linna that did many of those holistic outsourcings previously, but now the new type, those outsourcings are basically banned. So that makes that kind of market a bit more difficult. But it's that is basically materialized again already. So and on the other side, it's rather neutral, the political situation, as mentioned in the beginning.
Ville,
do you have a biggest political risk?
Well, I would agree on what Vesa was saying earlier. But in my experience, in my view, political risk has been fueled typically by a certain type of scandal. If there's something that happens, if somebody has, on private side, has messed up, there's always sort of a burden of proof on our side. We need to be better, we need to be more efficient, we need to provide a better quality than public side. And if there would be sort of for example, a GDPR type of exposure, from one of the players, or substandard quality delivered to patients, then that sort of fuels up a additional discussion and sort of exposes us to a new risk. But from the system point of view, I wouldn't see any major risks on the horizon.
Do you think there's a way for you as operators to sort of change the discussion around for-profit healthcare in terms of, I know the press tends to focus on for-profit mistakes. Is there a way for you to sort of change the system and how they view you?
Excuse me, can you repeat the question?
Is there a way for you to sort of, Mark Jensen of Ambea was saying in the nursing home panel that you should make a sort of more positive argument for the for-profit sector? Is there a way for you to do that in the Nordics?
At least in Finland, I would claim that we are already there. The reputation and the acceptance of for-profit players is very, very high, I would say. It's driven by large occupational healthcare segment, which is providing for the employees also the healthcare services. There's a wide acceptance on that one. There's an expectation that will be the case in the future going forward. We are regarded as high-quality players and value players. So I think even the COVID crisis and COVID period has improved the image of private players because of the agility, because of the rapid response for any given sort of new challenge risen by the COVID-19.
Benno, would you?
Yeah, I agree, and I think that there is more or less no political party that says now that we shall only have public-driven or something like that, because they know the welfare challenge that we have with demographics, for example, in elderly care, that the private has to be a part of the solution. But we have to prove ourselves every day to be high quality and to a lower cost to the society. And if we don't do that, we are, of course, in trouble. But we are challenging this every day.
Maybe to add on that one, what we would like to see is additional transparency also from public side, so that we can be compared apple to apple. There's nothing for us to be scared on that type of Pepsi test, if you like to put it that way. But there's a lack of transparency when it comes to cost and quality from public side, just to be able to, in concrete data points, prove our point.
So in this analogy, you're the Coke and they're the Pepsi.
Depends on.
Vesa, would you say
Maybe
that's...
to add on what Ville was just mentioning, that it's often the political discussion is quite a lot based on the ideology with very little facts. And as Ville was mentioning, that bringing in the facts, especially the outcomes, we are big promoters of value-based care, both healthcare and social care. When you are able to prove and compare what is the real value to the patient or the end customer with the same metrics between the public and private provider, then you are able to go from the ideology to actual intellectual discussion that what would be the sort of rational way to go. We have, for example, made outcomes-based comparisons in the elderly care and seeing that it's not actually either the public care providers or the private providers are not better than the one or the other. Private providers are 20-30% lower cost, but taking those facts in the table does help the discussion a lot.
Are you seeing much value-based healthcare introduced across the Nordics?
Sorry?
Are you seeing much value-based healthcare introduced across the Nordics? Are people using this system? Does that make sense?
I didn't quite get the question. Can you please repeat?
Just on value-based healthcare, are governments looking at it to compare services, or is this very much a niche thing?
Well, it's in Sweden, the value-based healthcare term as such has had a bit of bad reputation due to Karolinska issues. But in Finland, it's one on the government agenda to be included in the social healthcare reform. The same goes to Denmark, that it's the government wants to advance the measurement of the outcomes and using of those outcomes in both of the actual individual care decisions, but also on the sort of political decisions.
Interesting. We're coming up to 5 minutes left. Does anyone have a question? I know it's a Wednesday. It's been a long panel, been a long conference, but it's a very, very interesting panel. You lazy lot. All right.
Then if there's no question, I can continue on the value-based.
Yeah, go ahead.
I will steal the mic. So I think, of course, we welcome value-based comparisons in any shape and form and with any payer models. What's benefiting us in our model and in our development, what is driving us forward is that we have 3 different, very, very demanding payers who are always sort of challenging our services, the value provided through our services, especially the corporates who sort of represent smart money in a way. They want to get value for their money, basically. We are negotiating contracts with them, but they want to see the impact. They want to see the impact on the employer's health, and we have always the burden of proof against the corporate customers, and that's a big element which is driving us forward.
Interesting. I've seen a question's just come in. Who are the owners of real estate in your business? From the CEO of Med, I would try and pronounce your name, but it's not going to go well. The CEO of Med Centras. Who are the owners of real estate, Ville?
There are several owners, so we have not. There's no consolidated owner with our facilities. We are operating in rented / leased facilities for most of the more than 300 outlets network, but there's no one solution basically.
Now we don't invest in real estate either, and I think in Sweden there are a couple of listed players that are buying a lot of this kind of society real estates right now, but there's a lot of pension funds and like that as well, of course. There is no structure, you can say, that there are these 2 or these 3, but there are lots of them.
Okay. And Vesa, what's your view, sort of a pan-Nordic view of the real estate sector?
Well, our understanding is that it's pretty much all of the providers are working in rented or leased real estates, and you're using the typical real estate investors or pension funds that are the investors behind. But what is quite interesting development, we talked earlier about the social healthcare reform taking place in Finland. It also, there's a discussion that what will happen to the facilities or the real estate that the municipalities are owning now. And we are having quite a lot of engagements in the real estate transactions taking place in Finland at the moment. Both the municipalities are selling their real estate to the investors, but then also between different providers, there's quite a lot of action happening on that market at the moment.
That's something you're seeing, Ville, in Finland?
Well, yeah, of course, municipalities and public sector, they try to become more asset light, as we are already. So that there's a trend for sure.
Okay. 2 minutes. Any questions? One of you will break eventually, I promise. Okay, I've got one last question. So staffing remains a major challenge in most markets, and it's very much a global issue. What measures do you put in place to meet this challenge? Benno, quickly, I'll come to you.
Yeah, we have our own education company in Sweden, and we are spending a lot of resources to attract the nurses and assistant nurses. And we are, I would say that we are really good at it right now. But there is a challenge, of course, going forward when the total staff demand increases with demographics. But I think from now we are ready to go there.
Ville, 30 seconds. Staffing.
Employer brand, training our own staff, and then developing the care paths so that we only use the right professional for right tasks. So making the system more efficient.
Vesa?
What we are seeing overall is the nurse recruitment from abroad is picking up. It's still small scale, but happening more and more. but also using digital remote services and productivity improvement to reduce the need for that much personnel. And of course, there is also increase in the salaries to attract the nurses that have changed to other industries to come back to healthcare and social care. That's the one mean also that we are seeing.
Great. Well, I think we're nearly out of time. So I'd like to thank our panel for their excellent answers today, and could we all give them a round of applause?